Yo guys, what's up? It's time for another tier list. But this time, it's not going to be a racial tier list. I am going to be judging where all these races have been playing, which battleground has been the most beautiful tapestry for historical Warcraft 3 matches. Today it's time for the map tier list for one-on-one competitive Warcraft 3 play over the last 22 years. Yes, which map has produced the most legendary games between various players? And which one has produced the absolute biggest stinkers? Additionally, it's not just about the most amount of best games and the most amount of worst games, but also how is the balance on the map? Like, is this generally a balanced map, or has it traditionally hugely favored one side or the other? You see, in Warcraft 3 tournament map pools, usually there are about 5, 7 or 9 maps in any given tournament map rule set. And when competitive players play against one another, they'll typically both veto one away that cannot be played at all, and then they will pick their favorite map, which might be played first or second, or even third with certain systems. And the other player will pick a favorite map. So both will pick one of their favorites, they'll delete their least favorite, and then they'll play on the only remaining map. And if it's a best of 5 in a 7 map pool, same thing. But if it's a best of 3 in a 7 map pool, both players will eliminate 2 maps from the pool. And usually, as you're preparing as a tournament player, you'll know what your opponent is going to be eliminating before you even meet each other at the tournament. Now, how could you know that? Wouldn't it be a big advantage to hide where you're going to be fighting, so that your opponent is practicing on neutral map 1, 2, and 3 because he eliminated the 2 worst, and you are going to eliminate the 2 worst for you, which are the best for him probably, and then you meet in the middle on the 3 maps. So that's 3 maps of practice. You could completely upend those expectations by playing on the 2 maps that are expected to be eliminated and eliminating the neutral ones. Then they wasted 66% of their practice. That seems like a great idea, and yet barely ever happened. Why? Because the power advantage that some races have over another on particular maps is so big that it outweighed the surprise element of pulling such a stratagem as I just described. And so, where is the power imbalance on the maps the greatest? And which maps produce the most stinkers and which maps produce the best ones? Let's talk about it. We've got our usual tier S, A, B, C, D. Tier S is legendary map, best amount of great games, relatively balanced, etc. Tier D is the best producers of stinkers. When you play on the map that is listed as tier D, you'll go, who cut the cheese? B is just stable, relatively balanced. Most people allow it to go through in the map elimination and veto process. And then A and C are the less extreme versions of S and D. So let's get into it. I have prepared the following 14 maps. I have prepared the following 14 maps, and they do not cover everything. There's a couple of omissions here. For instance, there used to be this map, Maelstrom, that I was pretty partial to as well. Maelstrom was pretty cool. It was played back in 2004. It was played in 2004. Maelstrom was essentially Lost Temple on steroids. It was also a middle of the map healing fountain map. And what I liked about Maelstrom is that every undead player that had a match against an orc player on Maelstrom ditched their lifetime of practice of undead, and just lifetime, it was like 1.5 years old, the game. But they stopped playing undead on that map, and they played orc as well. So they would rather play orc mirror against the opponent who is a full-time orc player, rather than trying to risk playing undead, which is their main thing. So to put that in perspective, say you go to the Olympics and you are a karate black belt and you're going to perform at the Olympics or whatever. I don't even know if that performs at the Olympics. I guess not. Let's say vaulting. You're a black belt vaulter and you're going to the Olympics, but you can't participate because vaulting is cancelled, and you're actually going to participate in I don't know any other Olympic sports. Curling? is curling Olympics? The 100-meter dash, there we go. Instead of vaulting, you're gonna do a 100-meter dash just because you think you have a better chance there because the competition is worse there. That's the perfect metaphor. So what would drive a man to ditch their main race and go for their second race? Maelstrom would. So Maelstrom was not a good map, but as an orc player I loved it. Anyway, I digress. Let's begin. Let's start cracking on these 14. To begin with, Amazonia. Amazonia, let's take a look. I've got big preview pictures, so let's take a look at the previews, yeah? Amazonia, here we go. This is Amazonia. This map is pretty small. It is, you've got one player starting to the bottom left, yeah? One player starts over here in the bottom left, and then the other player starts over here in the top right. Right next to the starting spawn for the top right player, and next to the starting spawn for the bottom left player, you've got a Goblin Laboratory. The Goblin Laboratory is protected by a Renegade Wizard level 5. Now, in 2003 of Warcraft 3, roughly the beginning, 2002 and 2003, the way that the game was coded was that any creep all over the map starts at 0 mana. And then as the game starts, they would slowly start regenerating mana. And that meant that when a person started creeping their first neutral NPC camps, that we call creeps in Warcraft 3, so when they start farming the first NPCs, the neutrals, we call that when they start creeping, those creeps would not have a lot of mana. They would only have enough mana for one small spell and nothing big. But for some reason, when Blizzard came back and did Reforged in 2018, and they ended up releasing it in 2020, but they had been working on it for some years, and they should have been working on it for... They should have kept working on it for several more years before releasing it. But for some reason, they did something behind the code. They worked in mysterious ways. One thing that happened was all the creeps suddenly start with a lot of mana. Either half full or full or something, and that is true to this day. So for some reason 6 years ago, the way that we creep on maps has changed. There are more spells, that means it's a little bit harder, and that had two big changes in the Warcraft map balance and the way that you creep. The number one change is that we often pull creeps away from where they start. We pull them all the way here. And then here is roughly the maximum leash distance, which means they will start going home again and go back to their original position. But what happens is, when they are following you, they're mad and they will cast spells. But once they reach the maximum leash distance and they go back down, if you intercept them and just engage them in combat, they will re-aggro you, but with one major change. They will now no longer cast any spells. This has always been true for Warcraft 3, the way that they coded the AI, but it had never been that important in the early phases of the game because they didn't have a lot of spells anyway. But ever since 2018, players have started to utilize this pull leash re-aggro mechanic more and more in order to take less damage, in order for the creeps not to cast their stuns, their ensnares, their dispels, their heals, their buffs, bloodlust, inner fire, slow, etc. Right? So to get all of those not cast, you will waste a few seconds by pulling them, and then you let them go back. But now you take far less damage. You may even end up creeping the camp faster because it's not fully peppered with inner fire, which gives bonus armor and therefore makes the camp harder to take down. So that's one change that happened to all the maps. And I'm using Amazonia as a template to talk about this here, but it really does affect how many of these maps have been played historically. And it also excuses why the 2003 to 2010 gameplay of creeping wasn't as refined as it is now. Discoveries through Dota AI mechanics, discoveries through being forced to innovate because the creeps are now harder. These things both led to better creeping now, better manipulation of creeps. Just like Elden Ring and Souls-like players optimize the way that they do boss battles, so have Warcraft players been optimizing the way they do neutral battles as well in Warcraft 3. Because this Renegade Wizard level 5, this one right here, now has a lot of mana, a second way of creeping has entered the fray. And that is Lightning Shield, retaliation mechanic. So this creep is coded to cast a lightning shield on a unit that is mirrored by 2 units on his side. It can be northeast or northwest, it can be northeast, it can be north-south, east-west, it doesn't matter, so long as 2 units are adjacent on either side of a middle unit that happens to attack the renegade wizard. He will then cast lightning shield on the middle one, which starts doing 20 damage per second against the allied units that are standing around him. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to hurt me and my friends. He's trying to hurt my friends through me. What we do to manipulate against that is I will start moving into the creeps with this unit, and now the lightning shield is burning the neutral creeps. So the renegade wizard has sowed the seeds of his own demise. He is now being damaged, 20 damage per second. This camp has 3 creeps. 60 total DPS is being dished out by the creep himself onto himself. Ironic. And that has made this camp be able to be creeped very fast. This camp also happens to be very close to the gold mine. And that means that the total traveling distance there is so short, like 5 seconds. You now can creep it very fast because of lightning shield retaliation mechanic. You can then use the remainder of the lightning shield and creep this camp right here, level 131. This is level 353. Now you're level 2.2 and you can go into the map here. You can go here, you can go here, you can go here, or you can even do some cheese mechanic and pull part of this camp and take a creep and so on. Basically what this means is that Amazonia enjoys a highly accelerated early game creeping plan. That means high level hero early, level 2 or level 3, and has a very decelerated creeping plan for level 2 for your second and your third hero. Because look at the map, it's not that big. This is level 1.9, 2.2, 2.5, take this, you're level 3.2, take this, you're level 3.8, you take this, you'd be 4.5, you take this, you're 5. Right, so if you roughly take half the map without the red spot, you're level 5. What's the second hero going to take? Now let's say that the first hero doesn't eat as greedily, doesn't partake as prolifically from taking down the creeps. He goes to level 2 or 3 and then waits for the second. You'll be level 3-3, roughly. And then the creeps are pretty much gone. You'll maybe be looking at the granite golem. Additionally, this map is a tiny square. A tiny, tiny square. It is not a large rush distance. From the main base here to the main base here, I think it would take a peon about 42 seconds to walk, which is among the smallest rush distance Warcraft 3 one-on-one melee pool has ever had. If it takes a peon 42, it takes a hero maybe 30 or so. Look at the tavern. If you pick up a tavern hero, that's halfway the map. That means the tavern hero will only need 15 seconds to attack the enemy base, or to this base. And that means that this map is an insanely vulnerable map for rushing. Very good for rushing, and that's with a high level hero. So what we've seen a lot here is very early level 3 Archmage from these 3 camps, then Water Elemental Rush on the burrows. Rush distance is so short, so Orc has very few units. Then you can pick up a Beastmaster here, more rushing. We see Keeper of the Grove here a lot. Getting high level. There's this really sick exploit. You see this little cubby hole that gets crept out at the 2-minute 30-second mark already, together with this camp. You can build a Tree of Life here. You can then block it with an Ancient of War over here and a Moonwell. So now nobody can actually reach this cubby hole. And there'll be a tree here and you can't reach it. So this Tree of Life expansion is coming up for free. It can then eat its way through the 6 or so trees here and go straight to fight this camp from here and then route right here. And it's pretty much like an unstoppable expansion. And if you still try to come over there as a human or as an Orc player, the Keeper level 2 or 3 can just entangle a lot of units and defend very, very easily. This is one of the worst maps I've ever played on. I've hated it with a passion since the first time I saw it. The various abuses on this map make this a very uninteresting map. The fact that it's large open spaces on a tiny map means there is 0 level chance for ninja ninja abilities. There's no subterfuge, there's no camouflage, there's no hit and run, there's no macro play. My expansion is almost as close to the opponent as it is to myself. very short rush distance to an expansion. So it is such an uninteresting map. It all comes down to whoever has the better level 1 hero and creeping ability, which generally is Night Elf and Human. And Undead and Orc are usually just not very happy on this map. Especially Orc is not very happy on this map because Orc's design is partially based on the potential to do some hit and run to cover for the weak periods of time for themselves. So Amazonia for me is an absolute stinker of a map. It is boring. I've never seen epic games on this map. Everything that could possibly be wrong with a map is probably wrong in Amazonia. Except there are no random spawning infernals falling from the sky that can instantly blow up your base. Which honestly I think would make it more interesting. It'd be wrong, but it'd be more fun. Next map. Last Refuge. Let's take a look at the close-up of Last Refuge. Last Refuge. This is one of the newer maps. This map did not exist in 2010, which is when I last played seriously competitively. And I've pretty much been seeing it since 2018, 2017, 2016, when I started playing and streaming Warcraft 3 again, before Reforged came out. But it may have come out at 2015 or so, I'm not 100% sure when it came. But I just know it's been a part of our lives the last 6 years. Last Refuge is not a perfect map, but it is an interesting map. First of all, it already outranks Amazonia big time by having way more creeps all over the map, right? You've got some interesting locations. This area is a level 7 gargantuan sea turtle with 4 level 3 creeps. And notice how much of a death trap it is to go in here. Right? So you have your... Let's first talk about the standard layout of the map. You've got your main base here and here. Then you've got your first small little green camp here. And this is a very tough orange camp. This is a level 5, 5, 4, 4 ogre and troll camp. And that's a little tough for most people to do at level 1. So you've got your small green camp here. And you know what makes interesting maps? When you have different creep route options. It's really interesting to have many different openers, just like in chess. The different openers in chess forces people to have more knowledge about initial openings, responses to it, the threat ratio of every opening, the differences in timings. So it's nice when there's different options. So let's say this is usually not an option. This is a very common option. You can also run straight into the map and start harassing opponent in a straight line. Rush distance is average. Neither too fast nor too long, right? Some people militia creep this right away, or Ancient of War creep this, so that's an option. Some people start with the mercenary camp right away. Again, militia creep or Ancient of War creeping, so that's an option. I've seen some humans go for this camp first. Very tough, but if you don't get found out, very profitable. You can start with this small green camp, the Murlocs. There's some trolls here you could take down as your first camp. Or you could do A, B, C, right? You could go straight to the expansion, which would give you level 1.9 if you skip all other creeps. Or you could do the green camp and then the expo. So there's many different opening creep routes that keeps the game interesting when played on Last Refuge for so many years. So many different options. The biggest camps on the map, which is the gold mine Ogre Lord level 7 here, guarded by a pack of ogres and trolls. This is a death trap. This is a high ground platform that can be reached from two sides and is therefore likely to cause a point of important friction, a high level objective that either player would love to get. Because of the layout of the map and the fact that pathing towards it is relatively forgiving, you can go from the main, you can go from the middle, you can go from the middle via this side, you can go from the expansion from this side. This is a good thing. That means that this camp can be reached by 4 different usual paths. 4 or 5 can go from the main base all the way here, right? And the more paths lead to a place, the more potential friction and the more skill expression there can be in the quality of decision making from both of the players as they plot their route around the map. What would be different, for instance, is if there was a place that could only be reached in one particular way and you would have to rub shoulders with your opponent to get there. You would almost never fight over that camp because it's way too risky. You could be closed in, or it's just too far out of the way to even bother competing over it because you can't get there on time. this Overlord can be gotten to on time, and therefore it's an interesting point of friction. But say for instance that I'm here when I decide to go for this camp, and my opponent is here when he notices that I'm here going for this camp. It may not be worth it for him to travel all the way like so, or all the way like so to try and creepjack me. So instead, he will go for his Overlord while I go for my Overlord. So we're now trading 50-50 and splitting the map. That is also an interesting decision. And what's even more interesting is if your opponent is here when you go for the Overlord. Because now he has a real choice. Creepjack you, he's pretty close, 15 seconds away. Or if he thinks he's too weak, he will take his own camp. But it also takes him 15 seconds to get here. So now if you finish this fast enough, you may be able to backstab your opponent at the tail end of him creeping that camp. Very interesting map, I think, Last Refuge. I think, for me, the least favorite part is that all of the corridors are relatively narrow. Let's use a measurement unit. Torrents. How many torrents wide do you think this opening is? I think it's maybe 5, 6, or 7 torrents wide. That feels like a lot of torrents, but well, anyway, you're not going to make torrents because they're kind of bad. But it is not a very wide opening. It is difficult from here to get to the archers that are here, that are behind heroes or bears. And there's another thing. Last Refuge is not a good moment and not a good game. You won't have a good time to go for hit and run. So a lot of people maybe don't fully know what hit and run is, so let me explain. If both players think they are stronger than an opponent, they could just have a fight and they could let their micromanagement and their battle management determine who is going to be the winner. Both thought they are stronger, and so they fight, and then one player wins the fight and then wins the game off the back of it. If both players think they're weaker, they will avoid each other and try to extract value from the map in various places by doing either creeping or economy, disruption, and base attacks. Then, if they sense the other player is coming, they will avoid each other, right? But if one player thinks he's stronger, if player A thinks he's stronger than B, and B agrees, and B thinks A is stronger than B as well, then A will try to posture aggressively, steal enemy creep camps, stand in competitive places of important friction and high-level objectives, whereas player B will try to avoid, take smaller prizes on the fringes of the map, run away, or do base attacks only to run away the moment that that base is getting defended. This is an interesting thing. Warcraft 3 is an RTS where every unit matters and heroes matter. In an RTS, if you start falling behind and you lose maybe some skirmishes, you lose a bit more value, you lose some units, you're lower level, it is possible that you would just lose off the back of it because you now have less stuff, which means you can get less stuff. He has more stuff, so he can get more stuff off of that. So what is important in game design is that there are going to be ways that you can come back into a game, either through, let's say, evasive maneuvers, which I call hit and run, which I just described, or through other mechanics, such as upkeep management, which I will not go into this time because that would also take me 2 hours. So comeback mechanics are nice if they are not overly powerful. You wouldn't want to create a comeback mechanic where somebody loses 1 unit and then the gods give him 20 units as a story and a thank you, right? Then everyone would want to fall behind because the comeback mechanic is a rubber band of strength. So a little bit of comeback mechanics is good, especially if it requires skill to achieve the comeback mechanic, right? It shouldn't just exist, here you go, but it should be like, if you have but the wits to apply this stratagem, then that should be able to regain you some lost advantage. And that's what hit and runs often are. Hit and runs speak a message of destruction in your base. You must then come and defend because you don't want to lose all your workers. But then the assailant runs away again when you start either town portaling or walking back. And then that is interesting because you know you're stronger, but he just won't fight you. Stand and turn around and fight me, coward. And the coward says, no. And then you're like, shucks, I wish you would. And he's like, well, I'm not going to. And then that could just go on and on. That is relatively interesting usually to happen, but that is not very possible in Last Refuge. Why not? Why is it not possible? This is a main base. There are only 2 ways to attack it. 3 ways. Through this corridor and through this corridor. And the way to evaluate if a map is good for hit and run is to see how long does it take for an attacker to switch from channel A to channel B to channel C. The different channels that lead to a base. And this is how long it takes. We go all the way from... Let's say he is looking to attack here. But there's a defense here. Right? So he's attacking here, but the hand is defending the finger. So then the finger's like, alright, well, I'll just go over here. You're pushing me out, so I'll just go over here. And now I need to go all the way around this forest. All the way around here. A huge circle around. And the hand doesn't need to do anything. This is the worst game of Pong ever. This isn't fair at all. The hand doesn't even need to move. Right? So you can just position yourself here as a defender, and the finger hasn't got the chance. So now the finger, what does he do? He stays here, right? The second condition for why hit and run is good is if along the way of going from channel A to B, there are hobbies and errands on the way, right? Because you want to make your return time to the enemy base unpredictable, right? I'm attacking you through channel A, you're defending. Okay, cool, I'm leaving. You think, maybe he's gonna attack me through channel B. I'm just gonna stay put. But while I'm here, I'm like, hey, do I really need to go back? I think hand is still gonna be there. So I'll creep this camp, and I'm gonna creep this camp, and then I'm gonna go here. And just as the hand gave up and is like, well, I don't think it's coming anymore. I'm just gonna go away. Ha-ha! Now I'm attacking through channel B, right? So hobbies on the way are good. And if there's no hobbies, if the area is destitute, then the hit and runner is wasting time, or at least as much time as the hand is, the defender. On Last Refuge, this camp tends to disappear fast. So does this, this, and this, and this. The camps that usually remain are the fringes. This one, this, and this. And mirrored on the other side. This, this, and this. Those camps are too far away for the center area of control that the hit and runner has. So not only does the attacker need to move far more distance in order to attack through the other channel, but also there are almost no hobbies on the way as they are wrapping around. That makes Last Refuge a very defensive map in a way. It is defensive, it's good for ranged units because they cannot be easily flanked. It is bad for hit and runners, and that makes me as an orc not like this map very well. I tend to veto this map away when I'm looking to optimize my win chances. However, I do think it's a good map. I do think it creates interesting games. I love the layout, and therefore I'm going to rank it in, what do you guys think? It's going to go to tier A. I think it creates good games. Yes, A and B. Yeah. Alright, next up, Concealed Hill. Where does Concealed Hill rank? Concealed Hill is a relatively new map as well. I remember playing this for more than 4 years, but fewer than 15. Where does Concealed Hill go? So first of all, I kind of like this map as an orc player. Why? Because it has unique elements. The unique element being healing fountains. Now, a lot of maps, as you'll see later when we cover Lost Temple and Gnoll Wood, a lot of maps in Warcraft 3 that were designed by Blizzard, the fountain is always in the center. And that is not a good idea usually. The center is an area of high friction because both players have the equal distance traveling to get to the center. But it also means that if someone ever takes map control, they will occupy the fountain and then they will have an equidistant travel path to anywhere on the map. Imagine that's the mountain lion sitting on top of the mountain with a perfect view and a higher speed than you and a higher lethality than you, and you're looking to sneak off to the edges, but it doesn't work because they can cut you off anywhere. And anytime that you attack into them, they've got the high ground, they've got the healing fountain. Anytime they attack into you, they're full life, right? And you're hurt. Anytime they pull back from the center, they pull back to the center, away from attacking you, they have the fountain to fall back on. I love that as an orc player. I love central healing fountains, like Lost Temple on Maelstrom and Gnoll Wood. It is so strong for orc. It is so good, and it's so bad for undead usually against orc to have that. Because you know what? Healing fountains have percentage-based healing. That means it's really good for high health, low quantity units, such as Tauren Chieftain, Tauren, Kodo Beast, Grunt, Raider. They're all over 600 health, sometimes over 1,000, and that's great. You try to heal there with ghouls, it doesn't have the same effectiveness as with grunts. So orcs love fighting at fountains. That's why central healing fountains are, by design and balance, a bad idea. However, as an orc, I love it. On Concealed Hill, they did it a little differently. First of all, they've made it so that it's not a complete King of the Hill crapshoot, with the center player having fountain control and can control the whole map. First of all, there's 2 healing fountains. So if one player occupies one healing fountain, the other player can go to the other. So there's more equanimity of healing, more equality. Secondly, the fountains are off to the side. So whereas before healing fountain felt like free healing, now it doesn't feel free anymore. Why? Well, it is still free in terms of money, right? You don't have to spend gold on healing now, which orc normally has to do. But it is not free because of the opportunity cost, right? Almost all the creeps on this map are spread out on the side of the map. Small camp, big camp, huge camp, small camp, big camp, medium camp, and then huge camp in the middle, right? So most of the big to medium camps are on the side, and you've got some small greens in the middle, you've got this one big camp in the middle. But once the big camp in the middle is gone, you typically tend to congregate around the side, and that makes, usually, even if you've cleared out the fountain before, just, let's say you're fighting here, right? Having to send units to a cleared fountain where the creeps are dead, maybe this fountain isn't done yet, it's really far away, usually. It's a lot of opportunity cost to just go here with your whole army to start healing, because your opponent might contest the middle spot, they might take some good camps on the edge, and you're just too far away. So it is a much better idea to have a corner healing fountain or an edge healing fountain like here. Secondly, it is very well guarded, so it's not easy to creep it. The period of time during which you are trying to clear it to make it available for yourself is much larger, and therefore it carries a higher threat. And that is a better implementation of healing fountain mechanics than on most maps in the past. I give a plus mark for that. Secondly, the Ogre Lord position in the center is a very interesting friction point. But overall, I don't think this is a great map regardless. I don't think there's enough creeps on the map. It would benefit if there were 2 to 4 more creep camps on the map. Symmetrically so. So maybe 4 more creep camps or 8 more creep camps. If the map was a little thicker in some way, I think that's a bit of a problem on Concealed Hill. Secondly, there's not enough creeps on the map. There's not enough items to drop on the map to really spruce up like a Blade Master or a Demon Hunter, which is a pity. Thirdly, I don't like the layout too much. Basically, on Concealed Hill, it takes a long time to get anywhere. The rush distance is rather large, like a minute to the enemy main base from your own main base. And that means that it's not very rushy, it's quite defensive. Also, it is very common to find yourself creeping somewhere here and your opponent is creeping somewhere here. And because there's these 2 large cut-off forests protecting, it takes way too long to get around, which makes it not incentivizing to go mess with your opponent. This reduces action and reduces friction, and that reduces skill expression. Because now you're playing your single-player game and I'm playing my single-player game. We're doing our own creeping, and it's pretty much just see where the coin rolls and falls, who has a little bit more advantage, who has a bit better items. It is not as much tug of war. I find this map ultimately strategically unsatisfying. I also don't think it's the most balanced. If I can gain control of the healing fountain, I still have a large advantage as an orc player. I can mass raiders and then just keep controlling the fight and fall back and heal. I love doing that, but I don't think it's very balanced sometimes. Also, if you have proactive creeping races such as Night Elf and Human, I think it's too easy, especially to just secure an expansion. It's so far away from the opponent you can just... The expansion is, for what it's worth, quite tough, so you can disrupt them as they're taking it. But it's very easy for this map to become a 2 versus 2 base slugfest where both players aren't hyper incentivized to attack each other because it's so far away. And yeah, I've just seen and played too many uninteresting games on this map. I think there's a number of design issues, so I'm gonna rank Concealed Hill for C. It's not the worst, but it's not interesting enough usually. There's very few epic games here because Healing Fountain control tends to snowball regardless. Next up, Springtime, also made by the community, and maybe you guys know someone who worked on this. His name is Save Orcas, and he has been a member of the community and my community for a long time, and has actually brought me a number of strategies, even though he doesn't actually play the game. He just watches, and he's got a good mind for the game, and he keeps testing out things versus AI without an opponent, just, you know, sandboxing by himself to optimize build orders. Springtime is partially his product as well, and I like the map. I don't think it's perfect. Yeah, I think this map is pretty interesting. So first of all, you have one expansion location for both players. This is the main base, here's the expansion, and likewise mirrored on the other side. And then you have this interesting concept of a singular third gold mine for either player. So there's 5 total gold mines on the map, which necessarily creates a potential tiebreaker in the economic standoff where neither player is getting ahead. I think tiebreakers are important. I prefer usually to have 6 gold mines or more on the map, because then either player has the chance to get the third base, or maybe both do. Here it is a very difficult to contest, let's say difficult to establish third base opportunity. Whoever takes this base must be massively ahead. There's been rare cases where it does get taken in nitty-gritty moments, but overall it's just too close to the opponent, basically equidistant, to actually establish this without a massive advantage, where you would have probably been able to finish by just attacking as well. But the map has a lot of creeps. You see a lot of circles. It takes quite a while to exhaust the whole map of all creeps, which creates a lot of interesting tension moments. I think unlike Concealed Hill, there are many different places to go to, many different ways to go to every place. So you can go here, and then there's a forest blocker here. You can go around it, but you can also go like this. You can go like this and then here, but you can also go like this and then here. And the reason that's good is because it just creates more nuance to how everyone can walk. If you had, like on Last Refuge, this large pyramid-shaped block of area where you can't walk, it would become quite boring too. In a way, I think that's the greatest weakness for Last Refuge, not being able to hit and run like this. Springtime has more maneuvering ability, and I like it. I think it has a lot of good elements, this map. The one major thing I don't like on Springtime is that there's a mercenary camp right next to the main. I think that's something that should be avoided on every single map, because if you Ancient of War creep this, or if you Militia creep this, you immediately and permanently have access to a second barracks of free unit, well, not free, but free unit time production, because you mercenaries hire instantly. However, I don't think that this creep camp has an abolish creep, if I'm correct. The priest here only heals, and that is actually so much more okay than on maps where you can hire an early dispelling creep, right? So yeah, it's instant units, not free but instant, that's right. So when it comes to creating accessible route to an early mercenary camp, normally I find it a problem. By not having a creep that can dispel at, you know, the start of the game, you basically remove something that could break the balance. So I think this is honestly one of the better maps we have in the pool. It's very pleasant to play on this. I've actually had a lot of epic games on Springtime. That is also going to go to tier A for me. There was a lot of thought into making this map a good classic, but still feel new and different from all the others. Next up, Plunder Isles. Plunder Isles is kind of a throwback to a long time ago, This map is rightly so not in the map pool anymore. Here's Plunder Isles. Plunder Isles is an obscenely long map. It is weird. This map was played from 2002 to 2004. Even then, we knew it's bad, and we just stopped playing it. I remember playing this map in Reign of Chaos, back when tower creeping was a thing. You would basically put 3 towers here right away, and they would kill the red dragon level 10. Your blade would just be AFK next to it. You would get XP from those towers. That's how it works back in Reign of Chaos. You would just kill all the towers, all the creeps, because the towers were fortified armor, so they didn't die to the dragon. You would then instant level up from level 1.0 to 3. And then you would grab Staff of Mastery. And you would go to the opponent's base and steal 2 abominations or 3 abominations or something. It was so funny. Plunder Isles is an incredibly imbalanced map. Yeah, it's not balanced at all. So first, you've got 2 expansion locations in the very far corner that just feels completely by itself. It's so long to travel to it without anything interesting on the way. No remarkable features whatsoever. So this expo is usually like a late game thing. Nobody goes to this corner almost ever, and nobody goes to this corner. It's just too far away. Most of the action is concentrated around this area and this area, right? This is a kind of uninteresting camp. This is too far. This camp is relatively common. This camp is too hard. So you pretty much just end up fighting over like the middle in the early game. But the problem is that's your only choice, because rushing your opponent, it's a 65-second rush distance or so, which is too far. It means that when you reach with level 1 hero, your opponent is almost level 2. Additionally, none of the creeps, the small green creeps here, really connect well to each other. For instance, if you go here as your first camp, where do you go next? This is not a path. You'd have to go all the way back around, circle back, you know, loop back to where you came from, which is bad feng shui. You don't want to travel like that. Where do you go next? Level 10 dragon? No. Can't go here. This is a loop back. This is too far. Where do you go next? Here? Okay. Well, there's nothing to do here. I can't get here because it's on the high ground. This path is not open. This is a cliff. So you just keep going. So I go here, I guess. Right? So you get level 1.3 from this, and this is level 2.2 now, or 2.3. But now you're like so far away from everything that matters. It's just such a bad map. It's made in a long time ago. It's not balanced. It's not even remotely balanced. There will always be one player that wants to veto this map away. I still love it though, in a way that it is iconic. It's nostalgic. I had some cool games here. One particular against SK Insomnia, who is a Bulgarian world champion. Zdravko Georgiev. But I will never pretend to say that this was a good map. This one goes straight to the dumpster. Tier D for dumpster. Awful map. Next up, Lost Temple. Lost Temple is a lifelong tradition for Blizzard. They have a Lost Temple in Brood War, and I loved it. They have a Lost Temple in Warcraft 3, and I love it. They even made new versions of Lost Temple in Warcraft 3. There's so many versions actually of Lost Temple. You've got Lost Temple Prime, you had Neo Lost Temple, you have, there we go, Frozen Throne Lost Temple, which had pretty much the exact same layout and almost the same creeps, except they are the ice version. But the one that I'll be addressing here is just standard Lost Temple ladder version, the standard LT. And Lost Temple is iconic. First of all, I remember many great games on this map. But secondly, it is not even remotely balanced. Name any matchup and I can tell you who would veto this. Orc against human, favorite for human, but acceptable for orc. Both players may choose to go to this map. Orc versus orc, both players are fine. Orc undead, undead vetoes it. They're not going to play on this. And if they play on this, they'll pick orc as well. Orc versus night elf. Usually orc is happy with that. You get a free creep to level 2, except if teal is matched by a purple opponent. There was always a chance, 33%, that your opponent is in one of any of these 3 X's, right? There was no forced cross map. So there was this horrible RNG about if you're purple, you get a free expansion, and teal would have their expansion basically matched in distance to the opponent's main. An awful feeling. That means purple first scouts here, sees, hey, teal is here. And then teal is like, well, I don't know, my race is forced to fast expand in this matchup in general, so I'm still gonna do it. And the purple is like, cool story, bro. And just completely ends up smashing the attempt. Teal cannot go to this place. This is too far. So it was just so OP, so imbalanced. First thing you did was always check if you have the lucky opening spawn. Now, if you're purple and you're like, let's see if human is here. Ah, he's not here. I'll keep scouting. Ah, he's not here either. He was actually below me and his expansion is already finished. Now I've lost. It's so imbalanced. And Lost Temple has one of the greatest offenders ever. There's a healing fountain in the middle that is extremely well connected to every part of the map. Northeast, southwest entrances. That means if you can control the spice, you control Arrakis. No, wait, let me see. You control the universe. No. If you control the healing fountain, you control Lost Temple. You can attack Red's main. Oh, you know, we had a great fight. We're both bleeding. I'll run back to the fountain and I'm full life again. Attack again. Ah, attrition. I'll go back here, I'm full again. It's so OP if you control this map, which is why usually as Orc you would just mass Raiders. As Night Elf you could just mass Huntresses and then take map control in that way. And Human usually couldn't do the same, but at least they could take an expansion. And Undead couldn't do anything. Undead in that time couldn't fast expand. And they could also not take map control with slow ghouls in tier 1, slow ghouls tier 2, fiends. Undead was just screwed on this map in every single matchup. So they played Orc instead. That doesn't sound like a good map to you, and it doesn't sound like a good map to me. However, I will never put Lost Temple in tier D because it created so many good games and it's really fun to play on. I even like this as any of the 4 races. I've played here very happily as Elf, as Human, as Orc, and I still think it's interesting challenge as Undead, but my salary or prize money never relied on this because I didn't play Undead competitively on Lost Temple. I imagine I would like it a whole lot less if I had been a main Undead. The Lost Temple should be a tier C. Amazonia below LT is actually hilarious. LT is a much better map. At least it's interesting. I didn't even talk about the corners yet, which are this elusive, hard to reach red spot that in some games you will get to. The fact that even in a one-on-one, as imbalanced as it is, if it gets past the 20-minute mark, Lost Temple can become freaking epic. There are so many gold mines on this map, you could play a 4-player FFA on this map. Instead, you're playing one-on-one. That's how grand of a scheme you can have unfold on Lost Temple. And for that reason, it is definitely better than Amazonia. Because you have Secret Expos in the corner, Secret Expo in another corner. You could Secret Expo on one of the main base spots. There was this one time where I was playing against Kriolofus in a ladder game. He was my teammate and a very smart man, Norwegian two-time world champion in 2007. And an hour before we played that ladder game, I had seen a replay from some Night Elf on some website. And what I did back in those days, anytime I wake up, I turn on the PC, I download every game that has been played and uploaded on any replay site. I download everything, 20, 30, 40 replays, right? They had some sorting process. They don't upload just anyone's games, just high-level games. So I download all the games that have been uploaded for the day, and I watch all of them during breakfast, right? So one of those games, and I don't know who else does that, but one of those games, there was a Night Elf, and he did a fast expansion with the Secret Tree of Life on one of the main spots. And I had just seen that. And then I met Creel in Lost Temple, and I thought, I think you are also a studying player. I think you're studying, and you're a nerd like me. And I thought, I bet he has seen the replay too. It's only an hour ago, but I bet he's seen it. Let's go scout the main base. I never scout the main base. Let's go see if he's doing the ninja expansion. I knew it! There he is! and it's only because he did the same replay watching that's why he did it. He wanted to try it out, but guess what? I'd seen it too. That was really fun. A lot of cool different things that can happen on Lost Temple. I almost feel like I should put it in tier B, just because there's so many cool games, even though it's unbalanced as hell. I'm just going to do it. Who's going to stop me? Make your own tier list. Make your own tier list. For me, it's a tier B. Okay, next. Northern Isles. Northern Isles is a new modern map from, for all I know, 2018 or later. I can't really keep apart whether it was 2016, 17 or 18. All I know is Northern Isles was not around up to 2010, but it's been around since 2018. Northern Isles is a pretty interesting map. Let's take a look at the big blow up of it. Northern Isles has no mercenary camp. It has a goblin laboratory here and here. There's a marketplace, which is a unique feature that does not often feature on Warcraft 3 maps. The marketplace is something I haven't talked about yet. It's another doodad building that allows you to purchase items, both consumables and permanents. The items it drops are anything that you could find on this very map. It's not going to sell you a Mask of Death because you cannot find a Mask of Death on this map. There is some formula that I still don't know the exact inner workings of, but I know how it feels and roughly how it manifests. If an item level 1 permanent has been found somewhere on the map, then seconds later the marketplace will reveal an option that is the equivalent level, though not necessarily the identical item, of that camp. So the marketplace is also a bit of a gossipy tavern. After all, if I start the game with a Blade Master and I walk here and I walk here and I walk here and I walk here, and I get here at 2 minutes and 22 seconds, and he crept this at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, I look at the marketplace and I see Claws of Attack is for sale. I now instantly know that my opponent has crept a Claws of Attack equivalent creep. That's a claws, that's a Wand of Illusion. This is a Mantle of Intelligence. This is a Scroll of the Beast, and this is a Pendant of Energy. Within the entire hemisphere of the opponent's base, the whole quadrant of the map, this is the only clause. So if at 2 minutes 22 I get here, I know he crept this. So that is a information from the gossipy tavern. It's like, hey, wanna buy a clause? I'm like, where did you get that clause? How did you know how to purvey such an item? And they're like, word on the street is your opponent has been creeping Claws of Attack. I'm like, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Anyway, very interesting. So he's been creeping Claws of Attack camp, you say? All right, I know where he's gonna be next. It's here, isn't it? Right? So you can draw conclusions on that, and that's interesting. And the second part is it's not the arcane information you can get from the marketplace only. It's also the fact that you can buy them. Right? No longer do you have to say, oh shucks, I missed out. I showed up at Chuck E. Cheese at 9 minutes before closing and they're all out of cheese. That sucks. No, you can just go to the marketplace. You can buy as much cheese as anyone else bought, right? Or found. Like there's an unlimited supply. It keeps restocking and everything. Open 24/7. So if you missed out on all the Claws of Attack items, then maybe you can buy some claws at the marketplace. Full price, of course. No take-backs, no discount. But if you want it, you can buy it. You can even buy a Scourge Bone Champs there, right? So there's a lot of cool things you can do with extra gold on this map. That's number 2 thing that I liked about Marketplace. What else do I like? The map has a lot of paths. Many paths equals good. Many paths equals dynamic decision making. Large movement blockers equals bad. Boo! Big movement blockers, boo. Because now it's never worth it to go fight my opponents. I can't get to them on time. This map is ranking well in connectability, right? Then you've got interesting tension moments. Ogre here. No, it's a Magnetar. I like it because we don't see a lot of Magnetars on Warcraft Melee map. It's cool. They're big badasses, right? So you've got one level 8 creep here, you've got a level 8 creep here. Either you split it. I take this, you take that. Or we're fighting for it from 2 different paths. Very interesting. Every creep camp has a logical lead up to something else. You can do orange, hard camp, and then you can go to the green. Oh, it's pretty close. Now you can take this, right? Or you can do green. Green over here, then this green, then this. It's all pretty well connected, right? Or you can do 1 green, then expo, this green, then expo, or you could start the game, take this green, this, and then go into the map, right? So there's all kinds of decisions, which is so much better than on a map like Concealed Hill, where you've got very few decisions, and so it's very binary. Northern Isles is a great map. It is pretty well balanced in all matchups. It's usually not deleted or vetoed, and it also has many epic games. It's a 6 gold mine map, and that is better than a 4 gold mine map, and it's better than a 5 gold mine map. Terrain-wise, it's good. Balance-wise, it's good. Interesting games, lots of decisions, enough creep cams. It is a tier A, for show, for show. All right, next up, Turtle Rock. Where does Turtle Rock go? Let me start with the summary before I go down to the nitty-gritty. I'll blow up a picture of Turtle Rock and I'll tell you the summary, because I got very strong opinions on Turtle Rock, and they've been formed over many years, because Turtle Rock was first introduced in 2003. I remember this, and the first time I saw this map, I thought, one day fly. This map is shit, right? It's absolute crap. There's so many problems with this map. It's not going to stand the test of time. But there were 2 things I didn't understand. 1, the amount of high-level knowledge of Warcraft 3 competitive balance was very low among map makers. The incentive for map makers to make boring, good competitive balance maps was almost non-existent. There was no money in making maps for anyone, right? So there's no financial incentive. The emotional incentive to make maps for map makers is the satisfaction of creating something you're passionate about, and maybe people will use it, but you also enjoy the creation process. That's number 1. Number 2 is the pride to see that your map is being used on the big, the big tapestry of the esports scene. And usually one of those would be quite active, and the other part, they will care like strongly about one reason or not the other. Usually there was not much connection between the pro player and the map maker, because the pro player is too busy to talk to them, and he's just trying to play, right? And he doesn't have time to go practice on all these, maybe this map will be a competitive map. So there was no like rigorous testing system set up. Nobody set it up. There's no tournament organizer that was like making this happen. I did so many map testing until I realized many of those maps never actually make the tournament scene, so that's just time gone that I should be spending on practicing on real maps. And so usually there were very few new maps in Warcraft 3. They're not easy to make because there are so many tick boxes of imbalances that cannot be happening. There are so many tick boxes of conditions that must be met. It is much, much, much easier to make good Brood War maps and to make good StarCraft 2 maps than it is to make good Warcraft 3 maps. So the amount of options of competitive maps that we got eyes on was actually really low. So when Turtle Rock came out, I believe it was made, I'm not sure if Turtle Rock was made by Blizzard or by the community. I think it was actually made by Blizzard. I believe so. And I think it was made as a 2-on-2 map, not as a 1-on-1, which is why the main bases, these two, are so close together. But then it started to be used as a 1-on-1 map, and there are a lot of issues on this map. Some of them have been patched out, but let's name some of the imbalances. Number 1, 4 spawn locations, namely A, B, C, and D, but no forced cross map. So if you spawned here, your opponent did not automatically spawn across. Even in the RNG of Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 4, even though your start location and your surrounding resources are somewhat randomized, you're still roughly always somewhat symmetrically opposite the opponent. Not so in Warcraft 3. You could spawn here and have a rush distance of 48 seconds to cross map. Or you had a rush distance of 46 seconds to semi-cross map. Or you had a rush distance of 20 seconds to your enemy right here. Let's name some of the bullshit that happened on Turtle Rock. Number 1, human player here, orc player here. Human starts with 5 peasants. They instantly send 4 to the gold mine. and instantly send one to become a militia to travel across here. And he's like, oh yeah, there you are. Your altar is at 30% and your burrow is at 20% or 10%. I'm gonna summon every single peasant that I have into a militia, and I'm just gonna go to your base. I've got 6 militia in your base now, and I cancelled your burrow. You have 8 workers now, and your altar finished, but you don't have a burrow. So you're 8 pop out of 10. Hero is 5. You can't make a hero. So I'll take these 6 peasants and I'll start building a tower. I now made an arcane tower here, or a guard tower, because the next peasant would make a lumber mill. I'm now building a guard tower, and now your peons are hitting my peasants and my peasants are hitting your peons, but your peons don't have the DPS to kill the guard tower. So we both don't have a hero, but your peons are now dying to the guard tower. Then they start an altar here, they power build it with 3 peasants, they make 1 farm, they send 1 peasant to the tavern, tavern buys Firelord, they have now 1 guard tower and 1 Firelord, and Orc can't get anything. The only way you could counter it was to start the game, instantly make an altar, and instantly make a burrow. And then you would have to also send a peon to see here, right when the militia comes around the corner. You see it, and then you go back, you try to optimize your mining, and then when the 5 militia come in, you gonna try to body block with a peon like this, to make sure that the militia don't reach your burrow on time. Then your burrow would finish on time. After this human strategy, which we call the TH000 rush, which is the Chinese player that discovered and used this strategy, after this rush had been discovered and had been made, everybody can do it. It's very easy to execute cheese, and it's completely made possible by the too short rush distance, right? So now the only way that Orc can play on Turtle Rock is to start the game to make a burrow immediately, rather than waiting until your first new peon. That burrow is 14 seconds earlier than it needs to be for your altar, but you need to do it or it won't finish on time to protect against the militia. So you're losing 14 seconds of mining time with one of the peons that should be going to your gold mine. So you're always poor. And they don't even have to do the rush anymore. They know you must do this, right? Or you will lose to a militia rush. You'd be gambling if you don't. So because this strat has been done once, now until the rest of the game, until the end of your life, you need to start that burrow 14 seconds faster so you don't lose to the TH rush. They may not even be next to you! There's only a 33.33 repeating chance that they're next to you. And even if they are next to you, they may not identify as a player that would do something like that against you. So I guess the chances that it happens to you are just 20% as an orc. Well, I guess I just don't build my burrow early then, because it's only a 20% chance. Oh, they're next to me. Oh, well, I guess I lost. They did it. So you don't want to lose like that, because you think of yourself as a player that likes to win by fun and skill, etc. But yeah, I guess I just lost. So yeah, so you have to do that. Hey, Logan. And so that's one of the things that can happen. Oh, and there's so many other things. So on the middle of the map, so this map, about half the creeps are turtles, and turtles all have spiked carapace. Spiked carapace is like thorns and like the armor upgrade for the Crypt Lord. And what that does is melee damage return. So if you're melee, you take back 4 or 6 damage per hit every time you hit a turtle. And there's a lot of turtles. So half the map is killing you as you hit it. And that's a lot of health lost. Whereas if you are a race that typically plays with ranged units, well, you're not taking any damage, right? So that's not very balanced. That's pretty bad for ghouls and footmen and grunts, but Night Elf doesn't suffer from any of those. And then it's too hard on this map to take a fast expansion as a human player, because this is a hard turtle camp that hurts all your peasants and militia and footmen, right? And this camp is super badass difficult. So if human starts here, and the opponent is here, and they try to take this level 6 troll, well, they're gonna lose a lot of stuff. So it's like, it's imbalanced against human, it's imbalanced against orc, it's imbalanced against undead, it's imbalanced against night elf in all kinds of ways. Well, I guess then it kind of shakes out to be balanced, right? But wait, there is more. This map is the only map in the competitive ladder map pool that at the Ogre Mage level 5 that's guarding this goblin shop, there is a Watcher Ward. Watcher Ward. A Watcher Ward is like the Orc Witch Doctor Sentry Ward. It is invisible. Check. It has true sight. Check. It sees things that are invisible. It is permanent. Sentry Ward from Doctor is almost permanent, 10 minutes. But this one is actually permanent. And whereas the Sentry Ward is dispellable and killable by physical attacks, this one is invincible. So if you take that Ogre Mage and you get the Watcher Ward, you've got an invisible, true sight, vision revealing, permanent, invincible Watcher Ward that also happens to guard the most relevant area in the map, which is the Goblin Shop, and a major walkway from one base to another. And there's another one on the other side. So it is so snowbally to get this Ogre Mage and the Watcher Ward. It reveals so much crucial information that on the one hand, it's this really interesting, you know, friction point, congestion point objective between the 3 to the 4.5 minute mark. But on the other hand, sometimes it's so binary. One race will be better at getting it than another, and then you just have it, and then, well, they'll always see you if you walk there. And it's really annoying. And there's another really unique mechanic on this map that basically feels a little imbalanced. There's an Ogre Mage 5 here as part of the big Ogre and Troll camp that drops a Rune of Healing, which is it's like a heal scroll for your whole army. It's better than a heal scroll, actually. And it's too good. It's just too good. There's too many cases where it just nullifies this really meaningful, impactful skirmish that two players have had. You know, there's all these hurt units, and normally that matters, and it has ramifications that are interesting. There's consequences. There's repairs that need to be made. There's healing that must be done. Wounds that must be licked. But, oh, well, I guess I just went into the hardest camp of the map with a nearly dead army, and I heal from it, right? There's something wrong about that. And, of course, you may say, well, that is interesting. It's a unique point that only exists on this map. And you would also be right? Because RTS is not all about competitive integrity, but it's also about spectacle, and it's about cool things, and it is a cool thing. So is the Invincible Watcher Ward, right? They are cool, and that's why I think Turtle Rock is kind of unique and cool, but competitively it has a lot of problems. I'm gonna let the spectacle balance out the problems and all the BS that happened. There's also been forced cross spawn on this map as of recently, because it doesn't need to be that way, that you can be close rush distance and then, you know, have these crazy rushes that work. So I'm actually just going to put it in tier B. There have been, I would almost put it in tier A, but something must be done about the Watcher Ward, something must be done. And I think something was done about Watcher Ward. Although Turtle Rock does not get played right now in the competitive map pool, I believe they removed the Watcher Ward. They may have addressed the Rune of Healing, and they forced cross map. So many things that were both interesting but also horribly imbalanced had been addressed. On W3 Champions, they did remove the Ward and the Rune. Yeah, they also removed Rune of Healing. Well, then honestly, it's a tier B. It's a tier A on W3 Champions. But if I go by like the majority dominant version of this map that had been active back in my heyday, it would be a B. But I'll rank it then for how many cool games it produced and how many unique situations it created. Even though I hated to play this map sometimes, there are a lot of unique things that happened. There's one more story to tell about Turtle Rock. Turtle Rock is the only map that I've played high-level competitive undead. You may know me as an orc player in tournaments. I have spent most of my effort and love into orc in Warcraft 3. But I started as a Night Elf player, and I played 2 tournaments as an Elf player in 2003. Namely, ESWC 2003 and European Cyber Games 2003. And then by World Cyber Games 2003, I was a human player. And by Cyber X Games 2004 in January in Las Vegas, I was an orc player. So I'd played 1 major tournament as human, 2 major tournaments as elf, and then I've been orc forever since. Except Turtle Rock 2006. For Turtle Rock in 2006, I had so much trouble against human. I lost so many games against human on Turtle Rock with orc. So what did I do? Because they kept tower rushing me here. It was a very good map for tower rush. What did I do? I looked at all the replays and games they were playing, and I saw humans are always losing to undead on Turtle Rock. For some reason, in this meta, humans were playing either Griffin or Knight against undead. Griffin, Knight, or Rifle. They didn't fast expand because it was quite tough for them to do so. Sometimes they did fast expand, but they still lost, usually to a destroyer rush. And I thought, I can do that. I can rush destroyers, right? Orc in Warcraft 2 even had destroyers. Who wants to sink? And so I thought, yeah, I could do that. So I started my undead account, Rumpsteak, I called it. And Rumpsteak's sole purpose was to accrue enough experience as an undead player to sometimes, when I meet a human on Turtle, to switch race. So I'll play Orc on Lost Temple, I'll play Orc on Gnoll Wood, I'll play Orc on Twisted Meadows. But when it gets to Turtle Rock, I switch to undead. And that was allowed in the tournament rules back then, which is of course what I'm aware of, and therefore I did it. Later on, many, like 10, 15 years later, sometimes they say you have to lock in your race for the whole series, or at least you have to submit what races you're going to play, something like that. But every tournament does their own rules, right? So it was always allowed to pick any race you wanted, and people had been making use of that since 2003, but I never did. And in 2006 I said, okay, if I meet human, I'll play undead and I'll rush destroyers. So I started practicing undead on the ladder, and I beat a lot of Korean players in Undead Mirror, Undead Human, Undead Orc, like all kinds of matchups that were not necessarily important to me because I was only going to use it in this very tunnel vision of Turtle Rock. And I also tried to practice this. I told my human teammate in Four Kings about my plans, and I said, I'm practicing undead against human. Do you want to practice together? I thought teammates practice together. I was wrong. Nobody ever felt like practicing together. For some reason, people were very competitive with each other, even in teams. Not what you would think from behind what would be going on behind the scenes, but I was the only one that saw teams as family, I think. So it was my fault. And I said, let's practice together on Turtle Rock. So we practiced together, and I won one game. The human tried to fast expand, and I rushed with ghouls in both his main and his expo, and then I went to rush destroyers. And then he said, this is stupid. Nobody plays this way. Nobody does this. This practice is useless for me. And I said, well, I play this. Like, I'm intending to play this. I think this is good. I think they should be doing it, but they're not. They're like, no. We played one more game. I won again. He's like, this is stupid. Never wanted to play with me again. Then we actually would end up meeting later in a tournament in China in a place called Qingdao. 2006, first place prize, $6,000. And we actually ended up meeting each other in the grand finals. We had a really rocky road to the finals. We both made it there. Sure enough, game gets to Turtle Rock. I pick undead, right? He ends up being angry that I pick undead because he didn't think that I would actually do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? I told you I'm going to do this in the next couple of months, right? And he had a lot of bad feelings about that, but I ended up winning with undead. We played 2 other maps, one orc human on another map, which I lost. So then it gets to the 3rd map, and I'm like, what do? I only envisioned Turtle Rock undead abuse. Now we're on Gnoll Wood. And the problem with Gnoll Wood was both orc and undead were really good against human. So now I had to do this quick thinking. It's the final map of the grand finals, and I'm like, do I go undead on Gnoll Wood, which I have been practicing 300 games of? I've been practicing 300 games of undead to prepare for Turtle Rock, but it's also good on Gnoll Wood. And so far I'm 1-0 with undead on this series, and I'm 0-1 with orc in this series. And orc is also very good on Gnoll Wood against humans. So what do? Which one do I abuse? And in the end I decided to let comfort decide rather than prior statistics in the series. I didn't want to get too confident about my undead or to be like too happy because, oh yeah, I won with this, maybe I'll win with it again. And plus I said to myself, if I end up losing this series, I want it to be with orc. I don't want to feel like my final game in the tournament was with undead. So I switched back to orc, even though I lost with orc and I won with undead, and then I would end up winning that game. So I ended up winning the tournament, partially thanks to undead and my extensive practice for a very small narrow. And so thank you, Turtle Rock. Tier A. Next, Twisted Meadows. I'm just not going to beat around the bush. Everybody knows this. Twisted Meadows is tier S. This is possibly, very likely, very definitely the most legendary Warcraft 3 map ever. All of the greatest games in Warcraft 3 have been played on Twisted Meadows. There's so many iconic games. For example, Blood Castle. Blood Castle saw Spirit Moon go for Dark Ranger level 6, steal a peasant, and then he made a human base and a human hero and human siege tanks, all as a Night Elf player. Just because he started with Dark Ranger, and he would end up using human race to beat his human opponent. Iconic, never been done before and never been done since at high level Warcraft 3 play. Also against Moon, I had an amazing game at BlizzCon where I would end up losing to Moon, I believe 1-2, and we had an over 1 hour game on this map. I struggled through the entire game, but I was coming back more and more and more, but he had so high hero levels and he would end up with having metamorphosis. He made expansions everywhere and I would hunt them down and it was just so epic. But he had one base I didn't know about and he would end up using that to win and come back. Not a good moment for me to lose, but stands as a great memory in many people's minds. World Cyber Games 2008, also grand finals of me against Moon. Twisted Meadows was the deciding map. I would end up rushing his base. I started over here and he started over here. I sent my blade level 1 into his base, tried to get out. He blocked me. I was Staff of teleporting out, but then his keeper showed up, entangled my blade, which interrupts the staff, and died. My blade died. Then he would end up rushing with his 2 heroes, and I only have a Shadow Hunter, and I would use a Shadow Hunter only to kill 1 or 2 of his heroes at the tavern, thereby evening the score. We would then end up creep the map. I creep over here, he creeps over here, he puts down an expansion. We have this epic battle here that maybe my editor can splice in some of that footage from the World Cyber Game fight.
Den Blade Master, trotz Downboard, kommt denn ja, der ist 3, was will der schon groß machen?
Er will die Entscheidung jetzt haben, er will nicht wieder zurück, wieder heilen und nochmal ein Go. Er will die Entscheidung jetzt oder nie, er will den Demon Hunter erneut abpassen. Hex aus den Demon Hunter, den hat er schon wieder.
Das muss es sein, da geht er down, der Keeper.
And Calder's screaming voice, Der Keeper geht down! Jetzt geht auf die Nase! Yeah, just a great series as well. Also ending on Twisted Meadows. And honestly, over 100 different games from all kinds of different legendary players of Warcraft 3. Not always the most balanced map, Twisted Meadows. It has had many balance issues as well that have been partially alleviated by removing Rock Golem, Furbolg and Red Drake spawn from this camp, which was the case back in 2004. This camp had it, this camp had it. You could just summon a Rock Golem if you picked up the item. That's gone. This camp used to drop Tome of Experience. This camp used to drop Tome of Experience. That's gone. That was a big part of the imbalance. The map has been restructured a bit since. You're seeing the old version here. There's a new version that has slightly better layout and creep possibilities. This used to have a level 10 Drake, which was cheesable with gargoyles. Undead would take this island, mass gargs, then it would take this one, mass gargs everywhere, harass your base, never fight, only hit and run. I once famously remember there was this NGL 1 team tournament. It was Hazuops against Spirit Moon. And Spirit Moon was a world-class player, the most winningest prize money player of all time. And Hazuops is a very skilled player, but was mostly winning loads of things in Germany. And on the international stage, against the absolute top players, usually he didn't have as much success. And of course, he also played the race that had the least international success as well, Undead. So partially got something to do with that too. But he had one weapon that made him really scary. Hazuops loves towering, mass garging, and laming. And so him as the underdog, let's say top 60 player in the world, against the number 1 player in the world, he was able to win against Moon, and all it took was over an hour. I remember some people were falling asleep while watching it. They would fall asleep in the chair that they were sitting in, including my girlfriend and some of the Korean players. everyone else was watching because this was a King of the Hill tournament, which means everyone is watching, and if one player wins, then he will meet the next player from the enemy team, and so on. So it's the winner stays on. And so nobody was able to do anything except watch, but it was so boring to watch 80 gargoyles flying around the map. Okay, let's say 40 gargoyles, and never fighting and only killing Wisp. And you knew where it was headed. Eventually, Hasselhoff will squeeze out the life. And even though the implications are cool that he was winning, it was not very exciting. Everyone was just falling asleep. Yeah, so definitely unique on this map because there's islands. But yeah, Twisted Meadows is just the best map ever. It's so much fun. Next up, Autumn Leaves is a relatively new map. I think it's okay. There is a mercenary camp. Well, let's look at the big blow up. Goblin Laboratory, mercenary camp. Only one instance of each, which leads to friction. Normally, one lap on my side, one lap on yours. Not so much here, only one of each. However, these are two enormous camps that are both in the same area. You would never creep the laboratory while I'm creeping the mer camp. It's too close. One of the players would always be incentivized to creep jack the other. So the two most important camps on the map are in the same place. And in my experience, one player ends up getting both. Whoever's ahead by the 4-minute mark, the 5, 6, or 7-minute mark ends up getting both. And that has often felt snowbally and not very fun. And it's usually one race more than the other. And I don't like it. I don't like these camps too much and how they're situated. So I don't think it's great. What I do like is the fact that there is a really easy expansion that you can reach like so. But it's really close to the opponent, so they can harass it. Or you go for the more defensible expansion, but it's both further for you and harder to take. So I think that's interesting to this risk-reward balance. In terms of creeping options, I don't think there's enough. Do you see how few circles there are on the map? Say for instance, if you take this green camp, right here. You take this green camp, where do you go next? This is backtracking back to your base. If you go here, it's okay. You can also go here. This is too hard usually. If you go here, you'll go all the way out of the map. Just like in chess, controlling the center 4 squares is important for map control. I don't know what they call it there. But my dad taught me that concept a long time ago, that the 4 squares in the middle in chess are the most important. Is that true? So if you creep this green camp and then you go to the gold mine in the corner, true? Yeah. You're so far out of the map. This is the center 4 squares, right? And like I said, whoever's ahead wins both of these, or whoever has the better race wins both of these. So if I'm creeping here and you're doing the middle, then I got nothing left. If I'm creeping here and you're doing the corner, we're not going to interact with each other. And but there is a bunch of cool green camps here, but again, they're really far out of the way from expansion location of the opponent, from the center. I just don't think that this map works out to have really interesting movement pathing the way that it works out. I think it's a little too destitute of interesting creep camp connections and combinations and routes. There should probably be about one more camp on both sides, 1 or 2 more camps. For instance, there could be a camp over here that I think would help, or over here, or there could be a camp over here or here that would help. And there used to be one here, but it's gone. Now there's someone here. Overall, I just don't feel like it's a very phenomenal map. It doesn't play out that fun. I usually don't have much fun on this map. It's also brown, which is a poopy color. Green is better. So I'm just going to put this in tier C. Autumn Leaves. I think, honestly, it could be a B as well. Let's not let the color influence it. Okay, next up, Echo Isles. Now, the picture we're looking at here is New Echo Isles. And New Echo Isles was co-improved by Save Orcas, the same person that made Springtime. Here we have Old Echo Isles. This is a stinky map that got played a lot just because it was less imbalanced than other maps. Everybody played on this map in every single series because the other maps were so broken you would delete them. So you played here. It was the least of the evils, but not a good map. Not at all. Very boring map. Pretty much almost as boring as Amazonia. Why? Let me talk about it. If you start by taking this creep camp, you have pretty much only 2 options where you want to go next. To the opponent's base, because that creep camp is probably gone if they took the same thing. Or you go to the marketplace. Now the market is too contested and too difficult to actually creep, but you could try to steal the Ogre 5, which was locked behind 2 trolls so the ogres couldn't get to help their buddy because the trolls blocked it in. So Blade Master could creep this level 5, nobody else could creep it. So Orc often did this, green and then this, or straight this, which is very binary. And once that's the best thing, you're doing the same thing every game, thousands of games. Or you take this and go Oppo, or you go straight Oppo. Alternatively, you could take this green camp, but this green camp is level 131 and doesn't even give you an item, just a tome. And then, this camp is too hard, this camp is too hard to be next, as Orc anyway. As an Undead too, these 2 camps too hard. So after this, the only camp you can go to is the other, or your expansion. You can also do this green camp and then this. You're level 2, but you're very far from your opponent with level 2. What is nice is if you can creep to level 1.5 and then go to your opponent. Or you creep to level 2 and then you go to your opponent. These are nice timings that you can build around. What is not nice is to get level 1.7, 2.1, but be so far from your opponent. Because now you're just going to keep creeping. Because the map has a very short base-to-base rush distance, but it has a very long base-to-point of interest rush distance. And there's a couple of culprits. First of all, the fact that you start north side both bases. The main bases are connected by 48 seconds of rush distance as the peon walks. That's pretty close. That's closer than most maps. Most maps on average have like 52 seconds. 52, 55. Terenas Stand has 65. So you can get to the opponent's main quickly, but generally level 1.0 rush sucks. So you want to pick up something on the way, and the only thing you can pick up is level 1.7. So that's kind of lame, and there's nothing. This whole center of the map has nothing. No creeps. This camp is too hard, this is too hard, this is too hard. This is very far and relatively hard. There should be a small green camp here, there should be a small green camp here, there should be a small green camp here, right? Something along the way so that you can create nuance. Because if your opponent scouts you here and you're traveling like so, they know you have to attack them. There are no hobbies along the way. There's nothing to stop you in your tracks and say, well, you know, I'll just check this out, I'll creep this. So there's 100% predictability in when you'll arrive here or here, because they know you wouldn't be coming here unless there was nothing else, because there's nothing else to do. You wouldn't be coming here except to go straight to my base. So they can just start their mental clock and be like, well, I know when you're gonna get here. And what's cool is when there's nuances that there's things to do on the way. So Echo Isles is an absolute stinker in terms of creep routes. It is boring. Secondly, Echo Isles has been kind of strong for rushes. You can get level 2, then harass opponent, then pick up a tavern hero, which gets to their base so fast, and you tower rush. So many night elves have been tower rushed by human here, which of course I know is very popular for you guys watching. Tower rush are fun to watch. But what isn't fun is when the win chance of a tower rusher is 90%, even if the defender knows it's coming. Of course, again, that's fun for ladder players. You guys, maybe you like to see Tower Rush win every time, but as a competitive player, knowing you're going to lose to a rush that you've been seeing for years usually isn't that great, and there's no way to stop it. And so Orcs have been Tower Rushed here a lot, Night Elves have been Tower Rushed here a lot by human. Then another problem with the map, there's very few creeps on the map. After everything has been crept, you're not super high level, so it's very rare to get ultimate abilities unlocked on this map. There's not a single red camp on the map. There's no high level items because of that. There's no major contestation points later in the map, because all of the creeps almost are completely hidden on your half of the map. That is very far from your opponent, and these are all on their half of the map. So you've just got 2 contestation points that once they're gone, no more tension almost, right? And then you just fall back, you do your own half. You know they can't attack because it's too far. They do their half. Now, there are no more creeps. Congratulations. You have unlocked StarCraft mode. No more neutral units on the map. There's no reason to do anything except sit on your ass. And so you will. And so will they. Because there's a defender's advantage. After all, I have Mercamp in my possession. I have an expansion. You have an expansion and Mercamp. So if I attack into you, rush distance 60 seconds, you are hiring mercs, you're hiring units, you have 10 more units than me, 10 population more of units. Okay, I guess I just won't attack. We're both 2 bases. I guess I'll take a 3rd base. That's how to get ahead. Ah, shucks, there is no 3rd base. Well, let's just wait until all gold mines are empty. We are both 80 pop, then we both go to 100 pop, and then we still don't attack because there's still defender's advantage. This happens so often where neither player would attack. And remember what I explained about hit and run on last Refuge about 1 hour and a half ago? If I attack this base, the hand defends like so, then I need to run the longer path around to attack the main from below. So the hand can still defend. Hit and run is not possible. But what if I threaten your expansion? I'm standing in a central location right over here. I might go to your main, or I might go to your expansion. What's the walking distance? Well, if the hand defends from here, he will always be on time to defend. So there is no hit and run possible here. There's no special path that the defender has to walk because the attacker's path is always longer. So Echo Isles has no 3rd base tiebreaker, no hit and run, and not enough creeps to need to go out either. So it actually makes me appreciate games like Age of Empires 4, Zero Space, or Company of Heroes, because in those games there are always additional objectives available outside of fighting each other, right? There are important contestation points like sacred sites or control bases in Company of Heroes. In Zero Space you've got control points in the middle. That forces action, that forces friction, and that allows for skill expression and variety and dynamics. Echo Isles starts like that, but then loses it too fast, 15 minutes in, and it becomes a drudgery. This is the most played map, one of the most played map ever, and it is not good. Echo Isles is tier C, but wait, hold on, I've just been deconstructing Echo Isles. Didn't I say there was a remake of it? The remake dispenses with much of the weaknesses of the original. First of all, there are more creep camps now. The remake has an additional creep camp here. That means you can go for level 1.7, level 2. And instead of being here, you're here. So now you can go to the main base, or you can go to the expo, and it's only 40 seconds rush distance instead of 55. That is more dynamic. It also adds a creep camp where there was none, so you can get more than level 2.1 from those 3. There's also a tiebreaker base, a 5th gold mine, that is very difficult to take, just like on Springtime, which is also made by Save Orcas. It is defended, unlike on Springtime. It has no creeps on Springtime, but here there are. This is another camp that adds experience to the total pool of the zero-sum game of creeping, which is a good thing. This camp has been made less of a death trap because there are now 2 paths towards it. On the old Echo there was only 1 path, which made it usually very risky to take, which meant that you would only take it if you were very far ahead, which would just make you further ahead. But here you've got a new walk path, so there's more dynamics. And for the rest, the camp is mostly the same in most other regards. But the addition of these 3 creep camps, and to open this up, has made the map better. I would say Echo Isles is a tier C map had it not been remade, but because it has been remade, I will put him in B. Slightly less of a stinker. Alright, Shallow Grave. Let's look at Shallow Grave. Shallow Grave, I don't have as much experience on this map, but overall I think it is okay. You've got a relatively challenging creep camp here, which is the expansion that can be taken not too easily. It is just a bit further away than some natural expansions, and it is not too far away from the opponent to be unable to harass. It is not unachievable to creep it, and yet it is possible for the opponent to harass against it. That's a good thing. What I don't like on Shallow Grave is the fact that there is a Merc camp that offers Dispel, which can be Militia Craft and Ancient of Warcraft. Though what I do like is that it is defended by a Troll Warlord level 6, which is a pretty badass creep that in theory should make it risky to creep this as your first camp to unlock Abolish tech. However, the main problem is that the rush distance from the Merc camp and the main base is just slightly too high. The distance, if you were to take a ruler and you would rule it to the main, is just a bit too high to reliably, for any race, get here on time to stop it and to prevent this from being very worth it for the creeping player. And that's partially made worse because of this blocker, this blocker, this blocker, this blocker, and this blocker. So you have to kind of walk around that, and you won't be there on time. That makes this map bad in my opinion already. Visually, I agree with you guys that it looks pretty cool. There's also some interesting contestation point. I'm a big fan of the Tiebreaker gold mine. There's 6 gold mines here, which I think is better than 5 and 4. This is not easy to creep, and it's also far out of the way. And also, there's not a lot of easy camps around here. I think that's a weakness, but it also creates a very delayed objective. You can't go for this early. Usually, the opponent's main base is an objective for you to attack, because you need to kill them. And Ogre Lord level 7 here is also a big objective because you want to take it. And I think maps become really interesting when you add mini objectives near big objectives, so that you can fake out your positioning. If I start walking here, the opponent knows I'm taking the Ogre Lord at this red spot. But if there was a small green spot here, this can be a lot more innocuous movement. That means that sometimes the boy will cry wolf and he's like, he's just gonna get the small green camp here. No, I'm getting the Ogre Lord, mother trucker. So I think mini objectives should surround large objectives, and that creates nuance and interesting decision making. So I think this map has a number of issues. I don't know if I should put it in B, but honestly I feel like it's more of a C. It is not very balanced, and I don't think it has a lot of interesting dynamics. Shallow Grave for me is going to be a tier C map. Gnoll Wood. Gnoll Wood is a golden oldie. Gnoll Wood is a 6-player map that was most likely made for FFA and 3-on-3. But it has been used a lot for 2-on-2 and 1-on-1. Gnoll Wood has a unique feature, which is a center fountain that actually had a 50% chance of being healing and a 50% chance of being mana, which is insane. It is insane to create a map with that much RNG. I know the Age of Empires 2 or 4 players won't understand this, because they're like, what do you mean? Maps are always RNG. Not in Blizzard games. Not in Blizzard games. But Gnoll Wood was. And it was actually really hard to see. You had to tune your monitor settings correctly to detect if it's purple or go mana, or blue or go health through the fog of war. So yes, I remember sometimes I would play on tournaments where I could not set the monitor correctly to definitively know if it's mana or healing. But the funny thing is, it was kind of like that feeling when you're having lucid dreams, or when you're having dreams and you're quite aware of them later, you remember them. When you're awake, like you guys are now, and like I am, you know you're awake, and you know you're not dreaming. Except, I guess, if you have some condition. Generally, you know. I know I'm awake right now. But when I'm dreaming, I don't know that I'm dreaming. I thought it's real, usually, right? Because it's not lucid. It was like that for Gnoll Wood for me. If it was Healing Fountain, I could see it. I see the color. That's blue. There's no way it's purple. But if it was Mana Fountain, I wasn't sure. It could be mana or it could be healing. I don't know. I'm gonna have to scout it. I'm gonna have to test it. Which doesn't make any sense, of course, because I was awake during both of it. But either way, it created this little niggling thought of hesitation. I wasn't sure about it. And so, yeah. Anyway, but that's not a big deal. Let's talk about Gnoll Wood. Gnoll Wood has 6 starting locations. And for like anytime this was played in competitions, Gnoll Wood did not have fixed starting positions based on your opponent, so there was no cross mapping. This map is so horribly asymmetric and imbalanced that I cannot believe this was ever played in competitions. Let's name some examples. If you're purple and you start here, you have a mercamp next to you, right? But you have to go around this. If you're teal and you start here, you can walk straight into the mercamp. Which is fine, I guess. You know, both have equal access to it. But what about this? If you're teal, your tavern is next to you. But if you're purple, you don't have a tavern. You need to get your hero all the way from over here, next to your opponent maybe. Or all the way over here. You need to travel 30% of the map's distance, or 20%, instead of literally in your own backyard. Problem? I don't think so, right? Just don't buy tavern heroes, or just hire. It was a problem. Okay, that's number one. Number two, this camp is a granite golem level 9 with 2 rock golems level 6. It drops items such as Aura of Endurance, War Drums, Command Aura, Brilliance Aura, Unholy Aura. It could drop Claws of Attack plus 12, Helm of Valor. Lots of cool stuff, right? There's only 3 on the map. Blue has it right next to him. Red does not. Orange has it right next to him. Yellow does not. Purple has it right next to him. Teal does not. Problem? Hey, what do you mean? You don't have the big creep camp next to you, but what's the problem? Just hire a hero from the tavern and shut up. So that's kind of an issue. Then Mana Fountain was incredibly OP for undead. If they controlled the map, they go in, Coil Nova you, kill unit, go back Fountain, full mana. Coil Nova, Fountain. Big problem, right? But if it's Healing Fountain, Orc is imbalanced. Now Orc can do Raider hit and runs rest of the game and heal for free at the fountain. You don't even need to get Shadow Hunter. You just go TC, nice and fast. You shockwave workers, you kill all the buildings, you fall back. And you take any number of expansions, because you've got map control and fountain. Nobody can take you there, baby. So this is probably the most imbalanced map ever, and more BS happened. If you're purple, the rush distance to red is probably something like 57 seconds. But if you're purple and the rush distance to yellow, that's less than 30 seconds. That's a half a minute difference in rush distance. So instead of you finishing your defensive tower, it's halfway, so it's gonna get cancelled. It's so broken, dude. Okay, I once had this game in World Cyber Games 2004 Grand Finals against Welcome to, aka SK Zakard. I was yellow and he purple. Each of these main spots, when there's not a player spawning, has a rock golem level 6. Golems do not sleep. That means that if you get too close with a worker, he will throw a rock, stun you, and kill you. So you sending around a very precious worker to scout 5 locations. First of all, this takes very long. And peons do not like to travel all over the map. They are not nomadic in nature. They're homebodies. They like to Netflix and chill. They like to just stay at home, work, bring home the bread, and then just see their city thrive. They're not wanderers and vagabonds looking to go around. They haven't got any business there, right? Wisps, on the other hand, they can scout the map, and the moment they find the opponent, they're like, all right, cool, I'll just go on a tree here and mine wood the rest of the game. Nobody will ever find me, right? And also, wisps are faster, and they have more vision than peons. So wisps go around the map, they get what they need, then they stay there and farm. Peons do the whole trip, and then it takes so long to get home. Secondly, if peons have so little vision that there's only one spot where you can be, that you can reveal the rock golem, but he doesn't kill you. So you need to learn exactly which piece of grass to scout on. You need to memorize for every location. This little shrubbery, this shrubbery is where I need to click. And then I shift click here, this shrubbery, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. Okay, let's start scouting. When do you scout? When your altar finishes. 1 minute and 2 seconds. 1 minute, 5 seconds, something like that. 1 minute, 5 seconds. So my peon leaves, 1 minute, 5 seconds. 1:30. I see the rock golem. 2 minutes. My hero finishes, and I've checked 2 out of 5 locations. My hero finishes, and I haven't got any idea who I should harass where. 2 minute 30. My hero is level 1.7. 3 minutes. I'm level 2. I still don't know where my opponent is. Oh wait, I do know. I checked 4 locations. Ah shit, he's right next to me. In fact, he's in my base, and I'm here. Right? There's way too many spots to scout for a one-on-one game. And in fact, before I learned which shrubbery should be scouted, I had a game against Zakard where I scouted this. He's not there. I scouted this. He's not there. I sent my wolves here and here. He's not there. Okay, I checked 4 spots. So he's blue then, yeah? So I send my Farseer here, waiting for info. I get the info, and I go here. I resummon wolves here. I get here. It's a rock golem. One of the 4 locations didn't get scouted properly. But where is he? I guess I need to scout everything again. Oh, guess what? I don't need to scout everything again. Because he's literally in my base. He was purple. I know, it's a skill issue, right? But it's also somewhat symptomatic of the large amount of map you need to canvas. So I end up town portaling home to defend against the Farseer rush that is even now killing peons or harassing burrows, mining time. He ends up hiring a Firelord from this tavern that's instantly in my base. He's now summoning wolves and lava spawns. He's towering me. Well, I still end up winning. I don't know how. With such a terrible start where I didn't creep and lose TP. Just got lucky, I guess. But, oh my god. After this tournament, I said to myself, I will learn and find every single shrubbery on every map so that I will never again get hurt the same way. Gnoll Wood is an imbalanced piece of shit that I love to love. I hate to love it. I hate to love it. This is not a balanced map, but it is very good for Orc. If I was a human player, I would rate this in tier D without a second thought. But this is my tier list, and I'm not a filthy human. I'm an Orc, and I've enjoyed this map mostly against human and undead. Against elf, it's actually kind of tricky. As an Orc player, I'm gonna put it in tier S. This is an imbalanced piece of crap, but it's more fun than Shallow Grave and Concealed Hill. But it is even more imbalanced than Lost Temple and Echo. So I put it in C. S tier? No. Last map, Terenas Stand. Just like Turtle Rock, I could not believe that Terenas Stand had ever been conceived and created. When Terenas Stand came out, it was bad, guys. The mercenary camp on this map was simply ported from the standard tile set that this is. Do you notice how this is dark green and most other maps are light green? Dark green has its own biome. Biome. Terenas Stand has its own biome, and it is not normal fertile green setting, let's say. And that means it has its own mercenary camp. Basically, map makers in 2005 or 4, they just used whatever mercamp came with the biome. And on this map, that happened to include a Murloc Huntsman. And the Murloc Huntsman is a level 2 creep that has Ensnare. It was available from the start of the game. So what everybody was doing, Night Elves in particular, they would take a Wisp, they would go just close enough to make the kobolds angry and chase it, and they ignored Smeagol's advice. They chased the lights, right? And then they would send in a second Wisp, put it on a tree to mine wood here safely forever until the creep camp gets farmed. And then with that second Wisp, they hired a Murloc Huntsman. And that Murloc would start hunting. And then together with a level 2 hero that they got from this Goblin Laboratory, very easily, which is completely unharassable, right? Because, okay, they have the Huntsman. Put a pin in it, remember it for later. We're almost done. This is a main base, and this is a main base. The rush distance from main to main, even though they look closer to each other because they're not in the absolute corner, which is this, 65 seconds due to the bridge action and just how far it is. 62 to 65 seconds, I calculated once, right? That is far. So that means the opponent is level 2 if you are a person that needs to harass immediately. Normally, Undead and Orc was forced to harass immediately against Human and Night Elf. So Human and Night Elf love this map, and Orcs and Undeads hated this map because they're level 2 before you get there, which is always bad news. And you're level 1.0, they're level 2.1, because they go here, they Militia or Ancient of Warcraft this. This camp is level 111, so they only need one of it, and they're level 2. Terrible balance. Terrible, terrible balance. Then, to compound those issues, with the level 2 Demon Hunter that Night Elf now has, they get that Murloc Huntsman. And then they get another one from here. And now any grunt or ghoul that is on the map gets ensnared by the Huntsman and killed by the Demon Hunter and archers. Nice. Very nice. You cannot get away from ensnare. Now I know Orcs get ensnared with Raiders and they're very good. One of these days I'll make an Orc unit tier list and I guess you can guess where Raider is gonna go. But that should not be unlocked at minute 2 of the game. Before the heroes are even out, they can hire the Huntsman. And so I once had a tournament, World Esports Games 2006, Grand Finals against Moon. No, semi-finals against Moon. Moon had a 35-0 record in televised games against Orc. Any Korean, Chinese, and international player that had played against him, that played with Orc, had been losing 0-3, 0-3, 0-0, 0-2, 0-3, 0-2. He had racked up 35 straight wins, which spanned nearly 2 years of Warcraft 3 play in the big televised matches. And there I was, play against him, and we were going to play on Terenas Stand. Nice. So I had been racking my brain. How do I stop the Murlocs? I would wake up during fitful sleeps at night. It's like, oh, the Huntsmen are going to get me. It's like, cold shivers, cold shivers. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And then I had to do this. So I was actually thinking for the first time ever, I think I'm just going to call in sick. Like normal people call in sick. Why shouldn't I call in sick? Like, isn't pro gaming also like work? Like, yeah, sure, I enjoy it, but why can my brothers go in sick and I can't? I thought, I'm just not gonna play. I don't think there's any chance. Then I started practicing. I thought, no, try it. Try to come up with a counter. So I did like tricks against AI where like I come in with the peon and I try to like body block the wisp so he can't get the Huntsman. So I thought, okay, I don't think I have a good chance, but this is better than anything. So I showed up at the tournament. I was like, no, focus, wake up. And the game begins, and I send the peon to the Mercamp, and I'm like, I know he's gonna do this, it's just gonna own me. And I send in the peon into the Mercamp. I'm like, wait a minute, he's not doing it. For some reason, he's not hiring the Huntsman. There's no wisps here. So now I lost that peon to the creeps or whatever, or it's like there for no reason. I end up losing an extremely close competitive game. He didn't Huntsman abuse for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he thought I had a counter against it. I didn't. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I tried, but I didn't have enough knowledge how to stop it. He ended up not using it, and I ended up losing a very close game. And I think that little bit behind of the worker that I lost and my generally low confidence did not help. So I would end up losing this game. But I won the other 3 games, so I ended up cracking his perfect record, his flawless, unbroken streak of 2 years. But I lost this map, all because of the Huntsman. No, wait. All because of no Huntsman. No, wait. All because I built the Huntsman strategy up too much in my mind. Yes, it was imbalanced, but I should have just played my game and think, hey, maybe he's nervous too. Don't defeat yourself before the battle, you know? There's something inspirational in that. But yeah, we ended up winning the series, and I did jump on the table, and the Chinese fans did rush on stage, and one of them did hug me from behind and lifted me with his scrawny little nerd arms. I did not weigh much. And he lifted me, and I felt him. I felt more limbs than 2. He was very excited about that victory, as was I. It was an iconic moment, and I shared it with dozens of fans on stage. It was a very cool moment. Very cool moment. However, Terenas Stand is a piece of shit map. There is a new version of it that attempted to address some imbalances. Partially the fact that Laboratory is too easy of a level 2, too free, too easy. And the fact that this natural expansion is protected by this large sickle shape of river, right? Imagine defending this area. Remember the hand and the finger? I want to attack your expo, you defend. I want to attack your main, you defend. I want to attack your expo or your main. You defend either one with the same hand. These bridges are a horrible idea for competitive balance and for fun. It's not even fun, even if you're just, you know, playing casually. Two Rivers had that issue, and Terenas Stand has that issue. Guess what they both have in common? A series of bridges. Terenas Stand has 4 bridges, and Two Rivers has 3 bridges. Bridges are an incredibly interesting, real, you know, strategical point in the history of wars as well. Like, yeah, they're iconic situations where you can prevent access to them and then you prevent mobility. That's not a good setting for a game, because I guess I'm just not going to try attacking. You keep your gold mine that is completely encapsulated by terrain, completely safe. I keep mine. Guess what? Stalemate number 2, just like Echo Isles. And the rush distance is just too great. So they came up with a new version. They said, let's address some of the issues. So they made new issues. The new Terenas Stand moves the main bases even further into the corner of the map, exacerbating a difficulty to rush and harass even more. And they pulled the Murloc Huntsman camp here. So this is now a mercenary camp, which means that you now have a instant unit production building, free access. You can creep this before an opponent shows up, because even though it feels like it goes into the middle of the map and they can go here, it's still too late to stop it. So you get this camp for free as any race. Even Orc can get it for free, and Undead. Right? So you get this for free. You're now level 2. You get high level item consumable. You get free access to instant unit production. And then you can take your expansion, which is still protected by the sickle-shaped river. And there's still bridges everywhere. What? And also, there's almost nothing to do in the center area. There are no creeps around here. There's like a little stupid camp here, a little stupid camp here. There's nothing. This whole area, which means if I'm in this corner, I have creep camp 1, creep camp 2, creep camp 3 that are all really big. So if I know you're here and I'm here, there is no incentive for me to go here. Why? You finish 1 camp and 2 camp before I get there. We fight over the last. So I get maybe 1 or half, you get 2. You could just TP out, right? Instead, if I know you're in this quadrant of the map and I'm here, I take 1, 2, 3, you take 1, 2, 3. 3v3 is better than 1v2. So there's no action friction. We're playing our own single player game for most parts of Terenas Stand. This is a horrible map. It's imbalanced. It has produced some fun games, but it's too much of a stalematey map. And its improvements did not mirror Echo Isles' improvements. And so Terenas Stand, I think it's better than Amazonia. It's also better than Plunder Isles. So it's going to be tier C. There's very few maps I would put in D. D, I would actually just throw away the work. And maybe I would fart in the general direction of whoever made these maps. But for Terenas Stand, at least I can say, this map is not for me. I don't think it's good, but, you know, we don't have that many alternatives. So that's it. That's my tournament competitive one-on-one map pool. I was able to finish this one quite fast, in just over 2 hours. Maybe after editing it will be slightly under 2. This has been my fastest growing YouTube channel, and you guys are the reason for it. You like this kind of content a lot, and I love making it, so we're all happy. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Let me know in the comments what has been your favorite map. See you next time. Bye.